I think like I could have done a better job in supporting them of categorizing examples within this concept.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're saying maritime connections at this time, there really should be just a few that come to mind, right? There needs to be the Colombian exchange, since that's across ocean.
Yeah.
We're talking about Portugal's involvement in the Indian Ocean, and even prior to that, like the Zhonghua voyages of China. So I think like there might be a little bit of a breakdown. Obviously not in this one, they're picking up on the trade routes, but they're talking about the trans-Saharan trade, which is not maritime.
Gotcha.
Right? And so they see connections, and they're focusing on the theme, but did they use this like qualifier that we're specifically talking about across ocean, and like really that's more getting about incorporating the Americas into like the global trade, right?
So it's almost kind of like a vocabulary gap?
I think like vocab gap and like understanding that like if connection is this broad thing and we zoom in maritime kind of link, right? It's kind of like thinking about like a Venn diagram, like maritime's going to only apply to these things, so the whole pie doesn't apply, right?
Yeah.
It's only certain pieces of it.
Gotcha. Okay, so vocabulary and is it like accurate information? Or,
Yeah.
Because trans-Saharan is obviously vocabulary, it's just the wrong vocabulary.
Right. Yeah. But and it fits the broader idea about connection, but when it's specifically about maritime and that being, it's like, as we know, the central theme of this era, 1450 to 1750, which we call the blue era, is to help remind them like they're out on the oceans and like they're going across the seas. Then like that obviously, like talking about traveling across the desert, trading across the desert, should not fit that mold.
Yeah, it kind of goes a little bit too into the prompt analysis, because they would have had to have a really good understanding of this prompt. Maritime, I should only be talking about ocean trade, not overland trade.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like.
But like as you can see, this student, like the thinking's there.
Yeah.
The content knowledge is there. The applicability just doesn't fit what the prompt is asking.
Got it.
So is it relevant?
Yeah, so that's really kind of like the gap that we're seeing here, is their information is accurate, but it's not answering the question of the prompt.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I think that's good. It's a really good understanding of it. Awesome. So as far as the name it, the biggest gap that we're saying that the students are not analyzing the prompt to a deep enough level to allow them to include the correct information in their responses.
That and the specificity piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the specificity. And it would be the specificity in vocabulary.
Yeah, and then I also think like let's say like a lower student also said like maritime connections transform trade relationships because Indian Ocean trade, because Columbia, like I think they would need to like elaborate on that. The Columbia Exchange allowed the Americas to be incorporated, right?
Yeah.
The silver trade led to a truly global economy. You know, like, and name the transformation, not just name the trade route.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's like specificity in the context almost.
Yeah.
Cool. So the specificity and the FRQs, our two biggest gaps, are the analysis of the prompt, and then once the prompt is analyzed, being specific in the context of the information that they're giving.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about how this could potentially be retaught.
Yeah, so I think, and one of the things we're actually doing today in preparation for the next unit exam, we're going to do kind of like more of a concept map.
Okay.
And so I'm going to start with the era and build it out. Like, these are the three themes that we talked about. We looked at empire building, we looked at the Columbia Exchange, and we looked at religion. And so now if we look at empire building, so that there's no confusion about maritime again, I'm going to do like the next bubbles off of that is like we saw two different forms of empire. One across land, like the gunpowder empires in Russia, and then also the maritime empires with the Europeans coming over to the Americas and colonizing.
Yeah.
And so I think like having them concretely categorize things and put informations in boxes should help them kind of organize their ideas. Because they clearly have content knowledge. And it's more like, right now it's looking like a brain dump. Like, here's what I know. But is it, like you said, are they doing a deep enough analysis of the prompt to understand like kind of what the parameters that they're trying to work in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would we make that transferable though? To say to kids like whenever you're breaking down a prompt, these are the three things you should be doing or the steps you should be going through. Like,
so I think like identify the verb, right?
Got it.
If it's an evaluate one, you know that that's probably going to be you making a claim around. Use an example like we're qualifying the change. Was it a big change? Did it actually lead to, you know, a dramatic change, or was it really minimal? Like thinking about what we did with the Protestant Reformation yesterday. So they need to know that that term itself elicits then kind of qualifying, you know, the amount, or right, like this was a large change, or this had a dramatic effect, or this had a minimal impact. And so like kind of giving them already the go-to lingo based upon the verb.
Okay.
Because obviously that's a big piece of every prompt. I think then like having them circle every topic in the prompt. I mean, one, that's going to help obviously for them to kind of like hone in on specifically what it's asking.
Yeah.
But two, it's going to help in the context so they ensure that they hit every topic when they're doing their opening paragraph too, to get that point as well.
Yeah. So it's like identify the verb to kind of determine the skill that's going to be required in their writing.
Yeah.
And then as far as the content goes, circling every topic within the prompt so they know the knowledge that's going to be in there.
Exactly. Yep. And maybe even like one further push would be when you have a term like maritime, just define it more in layman's terms for yourself too. Just like circle maritime. Oh yeah, what does that mean? Oh, ocean. Think ocean.
So like putting the prompt in your own words.
Yeah, exactly.
So identify the verb to determine the skill required by the FRQ, circle every topic within the prompt, and then put the prompt into your own words.
Yep.
Awesome. So then how about the specificity and the context, the other big gap that we're seeing?
So I think that's just going to be a continuous kind of push, right? Like that's going to be, I don't think that's like an overnight switch, like, hey, I noticed this, and so here's like the one magic tool to like change that, right? And especially because like this is my more advanced class.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for my more for the normal periods, you know, that's gonna, I think there's gonna be more variation there, obviously, right? Just based upon ability and like kids' familiarity with writing. So I think that's just like that continuation of, if I make it a focus, and if every time we're doing this, we're pulling at least one or two different show calls, stopping class and having every kid think, and me cold calling every kid so that no, like, I'm not just going to, you know, a Francisco Romero or Eli or a Juan Estrada, like your highest level kids that obviously get that, like when I say what needs to be, how can we improve the specificity of an assertion? So I think like that would allow more kids to have to wrestle with it. And not to say that like when I cold call perhaps like a Mauricio that he's gonna get it right off the bat.
Yeah.
So I think it's just gonna be, that's gonna be unfortunately something that's gonna just take a long time, probably throughout the year for some of the lower students. Because like right now, you know, for them, they're still kind of at that point where it's like the prompt asks, you know, what were the political, social, and economic changes of this? And they might say, well, the changes were political, social, and economic, right?
Yeah.
And they think they're making the argument, but they're not saying anything new. And so like for them now to go to like a political would be constitutional monarchs, you know, something like that, actually naming a specific topic within those genres, like that's gonna be that first step. But that's still not specific enough, right?
Yeah, totally.
So the prompt is like, why did this change come about? They need to explain, like, constitutional monarchies came to limit the power of the monarch, right? Like, just using that as an example.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, for the analysis of the prompt, you could do like a model, walking through like these are the steps that you go through, but in terms of determining contextualization, it's gonna be more like an ongoing show whole group discussion. Okay.
And I think that just is due to the fact that kids are in such a wide spectrum of ability in thesis writing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think modeling, and I think like, you know, once I get the baseline where kids are just naming the topic or the reason, but maybe it's not argumentative in nature, you know, like thinking to yesterday, like, so we did practice one on the Protestant Reformation. It wasn't truly a change in Europe. And you can see on the back, like, here's some of the reasons that we came up with. So the ones above the line are, these would be the dramatic changes that we see, and the ones below the line show that like Europe really didn't change in like a dramatic way. So like maybe a kid writes, the Protestant Reformation led to huge change because Protestantism, right?
Yeah.
But what they would need to say to elaborate on that, it led to a new form of Christianity called Protestantism, right?
Yeah.
Like naming why that's a change and kind of qualifying that in their subtopics.
Yeah.
Saying that literacy went up is kind of getting more at it, but like due to the printing press, literacy rates increase across Europe, right? Like that's just more drawn out, that's more elaborated upon, and I think that's where we want our students
Yeah.
at to be successful.
Definitely. Yeah, that's the level of analysis they're looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just hard to get them there.
Yep.
Awesome. So I think in terms of a good next step would be scripting out the model for the analysis of the prompt. And I know that, like, for me, when I hear the word script, I'm like, I don't want to be like, teacher says, then student says it. But, like, using the one that I gave, like, for the annotations, just really, like, defining the steps that you're going to have kids go through beforehand, I think is really important.
Yeah, which, by the way, went super well yesterday.
Did it?
Yeah.
Good, I'm so
So
glad.
I did, let's see what I have. Yeah, so I went through, right, 'cause, you know, what we found, I think we've talked about this in department before, is the kids focus on following what you're doing and not really pulling out, like, what are the actual steps.
Yeah, the steps, yeah.
So we walked them through this and they had to write down the steps down
That's
here.
great, yeah.
And then we did a survey after the first set of analysis yesterday. And kids were like, yeah, because of the boxing, they're like, I could figure out at least what the topic was and I could get a general understanding of, like, what the source was getting at.
Oh man,
So,
that makes me happy.
yeah, so,
yeah,
like,
no, this looks great.
when half the hands are going up saying, like, this made it better for me,
Yeah.
and clearly, like, the other half were the kids that, like, generally already get things most
Yeah.
of the time. So, like, I think this is a
Yeah.
huge support for the older kids. So I
Awesome.
think doing the exact same thing with, like, the work is done and now we're going to the abstract of what are the steps that I'm doing here. That's what's gonna help, I think, with drawing out these assertions and elaborating it into the specificity for argument's sake.
Because I think that that's the power of scripting a model, right? Like,
for sure.
really going in, like, with the clarity. It's not even like scripting, it's just like an exemplar,
Yeah.
you know, that you're gonna use from that you're gonna work from as you teach.
Right.
That's awesome, I'm glad that
Yeah.
went well. Cool, so when are you thinking of doing that model on the analysis of the prompt? Is there a day coming up that would work well for it?
Probably, I would say, maybe not next week's block day, because we're moving into a new unit.
Okay.
And I think that might be more of like, let's go over the broad strokes of what we're moving into and kind of start talking about the themes before we get into specific stuff. So that might be a very content heavy day and usually on the block days I'm doing like 25 to 30 minutes of skill based work. So maybe not this upcoming block, but the following week's block.
Okay.
So the second week of October.
Tuesday, Wednesday, second week of October.
Yes. Let me confirm that real quick. Let's see what we're doing. So that would put us at, yeah, we'll be in the revolutions at that point, and so we will be going over. Oh yeah, that should be a great day. We're gonna be going over the Mexican revolutions and doing comparison analysis.
Nice.
So we'll definitely be doing probably intro, body paragraph, and body paragraph. So I'll definitely be hitting the thesis.
Perfect.
Today.
Awesome. And so when do you think, part of the do it portion of the data meeting, for a newer teacher, I might sit down and be like, okay, you write your script and I write my script and let's compare. I don't think that that's something that necessarily needs to happen now. Like, if you just want to write out your script and maybe share it with me so that I can give you just like general feedback on
it'll be in that lesson plan.
Okay, so you're going to include it in the lesson plan. All right, perfect. So that way I'll have a chance to give you feedback on it beforehand.
So that will be up,
So
I guess Mondays.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. LP submitted on Monday. Awesome. Well, I'm excited. I might steal some of this from my class for prompt analysis because God, they struggle.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So this is generally how data meetings are going to go in the future, just like identifying the gap and then coming up with like a solid plan for reteach. And I just did one myself, and it actually was on good old like point of view and determined bias, but it actually was like super helpful.
Do you mind did you do a model there as well?
I did, yeah.
Do you mind sending that out?
No
'Cause
problem.
We're going to be moving into that probably end of October.
Yeah. And it was the same thing. It's like a 4-step process that I modeled and then we practiced.
That'd be
with it.
huge.
So, sure, I will absolutely do
Thank
it.
you so much.
Okay, so this is going to give you, and just to recall as your lesson planning, the steps that we talked about, the email that you're gonna get from Whetstone is gonna have this in the do it portion, so you'll be able to go back and refer to it.
Okay, cool.
Because I remember by the time that I was planning my lesson, I was like, wait, what were the steps in? And I came up with it, like, go back and Whetstone. Awesome. Well, thanks for all your hard work.
Yeah.
It sounds like your kids overall did well.
Yeah, they are.
Meetings,
They're
and
doing
that's
really well.
Exciting.
I think the kids are just in a good place with class right now, and they're
Yeah.
super invested, so things are definitely firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, anything